All right, we got up.
Do you have any proof dinosaurs are real?
I do. So first of all, what do you think a dinosaur is?
A demon.
Welcome up, lesbian Dirk Strider. Hello, lesbian Dirk Strider.
Okay, so my first one is I've mentioned before that I'm near like the North Carolina museum. Have so to like start this, have you like heard the fossil that they found there, uh, that they have there of like the two dinosaurs that are like interlocked and they don't really know exactly what happened to them? That it's
Oh,
in
the
an
dueling
exhibit. They're
dinosaurs.
calling. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tyrannos. It's a young Tyrannosaurus and a Triceratops. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask like what your opinion is on what you think happened to them? Like, cause I think that they were probably fighting when they were fossilized because of things like the like tooth marks that were found. I think embedded in the it wasn't like there was damage to some of the skull of the Tyrannosaur, I think, and also the spine of the Triceratops.
Yeah.
Was it?
Um, that's there is certainly the. I would have to probably go see it and then talk to some of the researchers to really get a strong opinion on it. But it's not completely unheard of that one or both of them could die um, after a violent interaction and leave that sort of fossil behind. I mean, we have the dueling dinosaurs from Mongolia as well, with the Velociraptor and Protoceratops that absolutely died at the same time because they were caught in a sandstorm or something of the sort. I don't know a ton about the depositional environment that would have created the North Carolina dueling dinosaurs fossil, but I definitely will get a stronger opinion on that when I go there and see it. I just don't know much about the specific specimen at the moment. But I would expect if there's damage to both of them and they died around the same time, that probably something similar to the Mongolian dueling dinosaur specimen would be what occurred, where it's two animals that are either attempting to or one of them has successfully killed the other, and then a sandstorm or landslide rapidly buries them immediately afterward.
Yeah. I was curious about that because, like, when I had gone to see the exhibit there, they were talking about how it could have also been like a flood that killed them because there was like evidence that the area had like flooded, like right before they died.
Yes, yeah,
Mhm.
that's certainly also possible. That would be a solution for the problem of like a rapid depositional environment that would result in these sort of fossils being formed. Like flash floods are a really good way to rapidly preserve animals.
Oh, right. And I have a second question. What do you think was the coolest like prehistoric invertebrate?
I am really, really, really a big fan of probably. Well, here's the thing. I'm trying to pick something from that I've like held personally. Because I am always a big fan of fossils that I like know. I'm doing air quotes. Um, I really, really like Anomalocaris. The museum that I work at has an Anomalocaris specimen, and it's super cool. But
Ooh, I want to see that.
yeah, but I really also love Pterygotus. It's a giant Eurypterid from, I think it's Devonian. It might be earlier. But Pterygotus is like the Eurypterids. I don't know how. Do you know anything about Eurypterids?
Not really.
Okay, so Eurypterids are a group of chelicerate arthropods from that range from like the Ordovician up through the Devonian, pretty much. I think there were some in the Carboniferous, but I'm not sure. They might have gone extinct. And they look a lot like scorpions. They're pretty closely related to scorpions. But they don't have stingers, and their last two digits, instead of being like traditional limbs, are like big paddles because they swim, and the end of their tail is also flattened into a paddle for swimming. And they're super, super cool. Pterygotus in particular contains many, many species, um, but one of which is like 5 feet long. And we don't have an actual Pterygotus specimen at the museum that I work at, but we do have a giant life-size painting of a Pterygotus that was made by the paleo artist Jason Shine. when he was there.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they're
Have
super cool.
a, have a great day.
You also. Thanks for coming by. Hello, Miles. What's your question?
So my question is, I'm curious why no six-limbed vertebrae have been found or like ex
Um, well, we do have six-limbed vertebrates. They're just not terrestrial. So like for
There are?
example, yeah, coelacanths. Pretty much like a ton of the
Huh.
jawed
Oh, yeah.
fish have like multiple
Yeah.
series of limbs. I don't know if they have paired caudal fins actually, but in general, it just seems to be. Actually, now that I look at it, no, coelacanths have a single caudal fin. They're not paired. Um, but in terms of looking at the stuff that has adapted onto land, there are certainly vertebrates that exist that have limb-like structures that could be derived into proper limbs. Um, but tetrapods just kind of occupy all of the terrestrial niches, and there would be no reason for a non-terrestrial vertebrate to try and adapt into those tetrapod land niches. You would have to have a almost total mass extinction of terrestrial vertebrate life to pressure a six-limbed chordate to try and go onto land.
Okay, cool.
Um,
And like hypothetically, if that did happen, wouldn't it sort of just evolve into a tetrapod? Because I don't see it keeping like six limbs if it has to become terrestrial.
yeah, it's certainly possible that like for example, like a ray fin fish with two bundles of like most of the things that I'm looking at that appear to be like quote like six limbed are really ray fin fishes with like partitioned fins that like kind of appear to have three sets of fins on their underbody because their fins are like split. But yeah, there is not much of a benefit to having so many limbs. Arthropods are interesting because it's very easy for arthropods to gain and lose limbs because they have a certain amount of limbs associated with each body segment as they're developing. So the cloning of a certain gene can result in an arthropod with an extra set of limbs fairly easily. Vertebrate limbs are so much more complex that I don't really see a reason for having more than four because of the developmental cost and also the incredibly difficult cost to re-evolve a functioning vertebrate limb.
Okay, cool. It's a sort of related question. Does a tail count as a limb?
Not really. Usually when I'm talking about limbs or anything of this sort, it's like a movable anything of this sort. It's like a movable structure that is reflected in some way by symmetry.
Okay.
Um, yeah, a tail also is made up of the vertebrae, so it's kind of just part of the backbone rather than being a limb.
All right. Well, thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, of course. All right, the round penguin. What's your question?
Were there any dinosaurs that like to collect rocks or little treasures?
Um, that is a difficult question to ask because preserved like behavior indicating fossils are highly rare. We do know that a lot of dinosaurs put rocks in their mouth, and that's because associated with some kinds of dinosaur fossils, we find what are called gastroliths, which are stones that were swallowed by an animal and then remained in their stomach for long enough to become smooth. And so we know that a lot of the rocks that we see surrounding dinosaur fossils are the shape and size that they are because they were eaten by a dinosaur when it was younger and just remained in its stomach for basically its entire life.
Well, I do have a second question.
Sure, go ahead.
You know birds?
I do know birds. I'm
How
familiar.
they're like the descendants of dinosaurs? Yeah. Does that mean that like pterodactyls would have had more of a jaw or they have more of a beak?
So birds are dinosaurs. First of all, when you descend, I'm not saying you don't think this, but birds are dinosaurs because that's how cladistics works. You don't
I
evolve.
don't know how to explain things. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're so fine. You're so fine. I'm explaining this mostly for people in the audience rather than for you, to ensure that everybody can follow along. So birds are dinosaurs because if you evolve from something, you remain in that group. Pterosaurs, like the pterodactylus or its relatives, are not dinosaurs. Their wings are supported in a different way to birds. Instead of having three fused digits and an alula, in birds, they have one free digit and either two or three fused digits in the wing.
So it'd be more like a bat.
Yeah, pterosaurs have wings that are structured like a bat, but the membrane of the wing, that like piece of skin, attaches just to their pinky finger, and it runs from their pinky to their ankle. And so pterosaurs are fairly closely related to birds, but they evolved beaks independently. Pterosaurs and birds both. The hypothesis is they both lost their teeth because teeth are heavy and beaks are light. Beaks are generally made out of a keratin rhamphtheca, where teeth are made out of bone and enamel, and those are both really heavy. And if you want to be a successful flying animal, you cut down on weight as quickly as possible because those are calories that you don't need to burn to live. So yeah, the beaks of pterosaurs and birds are convergent. They're not. They don't share a beaked ancestor.
Well, thank you. Those are all my questions for now. Bye.
Of course, thank you, the round penguin. All right, we got up.
Yes. Do you have any proof dinosaurs are real?
I do. So first of all, what do you think a dinosaur is?
A demon.
Okay, so what is a demon taxonomic? What is a demon taxonomically?
An evil being sent by Satan.
Okay, how would you tell if you found like the bones of an animal that it was or wasn't a demon?
Radiology dating.
So dating is not
Carbon dating is fake.
okay, but you just said you would use that to tell if it was a demon. So are you using radiometric dating? Are you considering that valid when you use it to define a demon or not?
To see how old it was.
Okay. But
And
that's
there's
not
6,000 years
diagnostic taxonomically. We don't use dating to define what an organism is.
Yeah, but the dinosaurs. How long ago were the dinosaurs here?
They showed up around like 250 million years ago.
The Earth isn't that old, and there's no proof.
I think there is a pretty significant amount of proof. So when we know the Earth is at least I think like 4.8 billion years old is the estimate.
But it's not.
Okay. So do you have a counter argument against radiometric dating of igneous rock?
It's not real. Everything, your entire job is fake.
So that's a claim. Do you have
No.
evidence to support your claim, or are you just going to make a claim? Because a claim isn't
It's
an
not
argument.
real.
Okay. Do you want to? I mean, we can have a productive conversation about that. But
I mean, listening to your voice is kind of hurting me, so I don't know about that one.
okay, buddy.
You should maybe go get your testosterone checked instead of like talking about fake whatever these things are, dinosaurs.
It really warms my heart that you say I should get my testosterone checked. That made me probably the happiest I've been in the last few weeks, genuinely.
Okay.
I could start giving you my estrogen.
That's not a bad idea. I can't believe I'm a passoid. Anyway.
I don't know what any of those words mean, but you sound really
I
annoying.
infer.
It's good. That means you haven't spent time
I'm
on...
inferred. Okay. Anyway, a dinosaur is an animal within Archosauria, which is a vertebrate with 2 holes in front of its eyes and 2 holes behind its eyes. Do you agree that there are animals that exist around today which are archosaurs?
They're muted.
Oh, he muted himself. Okay, I'm getting a lot of requests to get rid of All right. Anyway, dinosaurs definitely exist because there are animals around today that fit the definition of dinosaur, which are the birds, of course. Not the crocodiles, but the birds. Welcome up again, Lesbian Dirk Strider. Yeah.
Hello, I have yet another question.
Awesome. Go ahead. What's your question?
Okay, so is there any evidence of dinosaurs having adaptations in a period of time that may have been colder than another one? Do we have fossils of dinosaurs that would show maybe they had thicker feathers or anything?
We don't really have loads of data for closely related dinosaurs across long periods of time. Pretty much every dinosaur we have is a chronospecies, which is to say it's defined not only by its unique morphology, but also by its position in time. So we don't have that like tight year-to-year data on feather size variation that you would need for like analysis of birds, for example. Like we can get a specimen of a bird every 10 years and get an understanding of how their feathers are changing over that course of time. We can do that also for like mollusks in the fossil record, but dinosaurs are really quite rare compared to other groups of animals. You can do that sort of research if you're a marine invertebrate paleontologist, like Dr. Jocelyn Sessa, who I'm a big fan of. And she does research specifically on marine mollusks, and I think some freshwater mollusks. And you can do really good year-to-year research on those mollusks because they just fossilize like crazy. They have really hard shells and they tend to preserve very frequently. But preserving a dinosaur as a fossil is a freak accident. So you can't really collect the sort of data from dinosaurs that you would need to get that information. Did it happen? I'm sure you had periods where it was like Darwin's finches, where you had dinosaurs living in a climate that, got really cold and the ones with less feathers died out. And then it got really warm and the ones with more feathers died out. And you had sort of, oscillation in feather thickness for the population.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming up. Have a great night.
You too.
Welcome up, Miles. What's your question?
Okay, so my question is, crocodiles have been like basically the same the whole time they've existed, right?
Well, not particularly. There are crocodiles that existed, or crocodilians, maybe even just Scutasukians, that existed during the Mesozoic and earlier times that look a lot like the modern crocodiles of today. But just like horseshoe crabs, those are different species that are related to, but not necessarily identical to the living crocodiles.
Okay, because I was just thinking, like I'd seen fossils and stuff that looked a lot like crocodiles do now, but they were really, really old. So I was wondering how something could have been around for that long, and none of the prey it hunted had like changed enough that it was forced to change, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if we just look at like crocodiloids, like the crocodilians and their allies, they represent kind of the modern crocodilians kind of just represent the ones that survived. They didn't really need to change so much because their niche didn't change. They are predators that sit below the surface of the water and wait for something large to come by and drink before they bite it. Things have needed to drink at water for as long as things have lived on land. And so as long as there's a body of water large enough to house a crocodilian, they're going to be able to do relatively similar things. That's not to say there's no variation. You don't find anything that looks exactly like a Nile crocodile, in the Maastrichtian. They've only been around for about 10 million years. If you look at things like the Mikosuchids, they're a group that are exceptionally closely related to the modern Nile crocodiles. But not only are they basically all extinct as of, I think, 3,000 years ago, they are a little bit different morphologically, and they're much, much older. So basically what I'm trying to get at is the reason that you find a lot of animals that look similar to modern crocodilians in the fossil record is because there used to be a huge diversity of crocodilian body plans that existed across all of geological time. But particularly in recent times, selective pressure has caused a lot of those diverse crocodilian body plans to go extinct. And so while you find a bunch of the crocodilians from that really typical looking crocodilian lineage, there are loads of different groups of crocodilians like the Mikosuchids, which had their legs long and directly under them. The even like kind of crazier ones like the Pristichampsus or any of the herbivorous crocodiles. Those ones just happened to go extinct, and we don't find them around today. So really only a very small proportion of crocodiles in the fossil record or crocodilians in the fossil record look like our modern crocodiles. Um, and that's because they're the ones that haven't been forced to change over such a rapid period of time that they go extinct.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then I have one more question. Um, since like things becoming fossils is so rare,
Mhm.
would you say we found most of the fossils that are around at this point?
Absolutely not. Fossils are not, well, things becoming fossilized are rare, but so much stuff has died over the course of geological time. So even if fossils, if one in every like 10 million organisms fossilized, you would still have too many organisms to dig up in 10 lifetimes. There are so many things that have lived and died on Earth that I don't think we'll ever really run out of fossils. Um, Now, will we run out of fossil fuels? That's another question because that's a very specific kind of fossil that hasn't
Yeah,
been produced throughout all of geological time because it's unique to the Carboniferous and Carboniferous conditions. So yes, fossil fuels are non-renewable. I wanted to address that, but fossils themselves are incredibly common in the ground. They are rare to form, but the Earth is so old that fossils are around with a good amount of consistency.
yeah, because the numbers that you hear about like how old the Earth are, it's kind of hard to like conceptualize how old that actually is
Oh yeah,
because it sort of just sounds like a big number.
it is a very big number, and it's hard to really wrap your head around that. Um, because and that I think trips a lot of people up when they're understanding evolution because they think of these things as happening in a perceivable human scale sequence. But no, so many of these species are changing on a time scale that the entire human race could live and die before we see the emergence of another species. That's not to say that we can't observe evolution on a modern time scale because there are situations where it happens quickly, you know, punctuated equilibrium and all that. But you know, this is an insane length of time, and it's the techniques we have to use to observe it are not familiar to the average person or even make sense to the average person. It takes a lot of really explaining to understand how we survey geological time.
Yeah, I kind of struggle to understand stuff with evolution because a little over a year ago I was like full on young Earth creationist.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I've been in your shoes. I was raised pretty intensely religious on a commune. But you know, fortunately, my parents weren't as into it as a lot of people around me were, and so as I got into science, I was able to kind of comfortably distance myself from that. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I'm very proud of you for making that leap and trying to really understand.
Yeah, because because I live in Alabama, so there's like no one to talk to. Like
Mm,
even in like we have biology, right? Because I'm a freshman in high school. We have
yeah.
biology, and there is like the biology. It's to the point the biology teacher stands up and says, "Yeah, so I'm not going to teach any of this. Just do the worksheet." Because the biology teacher that we have doesn't believe in evolution.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely get that. That's the education in a lot of the U.S. is really messed up, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah,
But fortunately, there are a lot of resources, you know, dedicated to understanding that sort of thing online. So if you really are into learning about evolution and evolutionary concepts, I can't really name anything good off the top of my head, but shoot me a DM and to remind me, and I will try to make a video at some point compiling, you know, like a list of resources that you and other people could take a look at to get an understanding of those like really basic, essential evolutionary concepts.
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, of
Because
course. Yeah.
uh, I'm trying, I when I was a kid, like I'm still a kid, but when I was like a younger kid, I had this book that was called like a dinosaur atlas, and it was a
Hmm.
map of where like dinosaur fossils have been found. Because I was like a big dinosaur kid, and
Yeah.
my parents they used to like sit down and read with me. They made me throw the book away because it mentioned evolution as the origin of dinosaurs on the first page, and
Oh
I get
man.
sad about that sometimes because it was a cool book.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I'm sorry about that, man.
Yeah.
That's really hard to have, people close to you shoot down your interests in science and dinosaurs specifically. I mean, that didn't happen from my parents, but it did happen from people that I respected like that. And so it is a really difficult thing to happen to you, especially when you're so young.
Well, thank you for answering my questions. I will send you that DM
Yeah, of course.
for this. I'm probably gonna go to bed now because it's 11 p.m. and I have school tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, me
Uh,
too. Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
All right. See ya. Have a great night, man.
You too.
Why is Fran your fave? Because we have some really excellent behavioral data on her species because it leaves behind a lot of fossil footprints. All right, I'm going to try and clear out.
Oh, sorry. I was just. You have a friend who has a trans cockatiel, right?
Yes, I do have a
Yes,
friend who has a
okay.
trans
I wanted to
cockatiel.
make sure I was getting that right because I was telling people about that in chat.
Yes, I do have a friend with a transgender cockatiel. It's a cockatiel that was born male and then just at some point spontaneously switched sex. You know, she was born male and she had completely recognizable male sexual organs at when she came out of the egg. But as she aged, she took on the female plumage, and she got CT'd or X-rayed recently, and they found that her sexual organs were much more typically in line with the position of them on a female cockatiel.
That's cool.
Didn't have to pay for surgery or nothing.
That's awesome.
All right, welcome up, Game Boy 98.
Yo,
What's up?
so my question was, first off, that was an interesting thing. Do you think that's the cockatoo? Do you think that's a genetic issue or?
I don't know if it would be genetic or related to like natal hormone levels. I know a lot of stuff that influences like brain development and body development isn't necessarily genetic so much as it has to do with the conditions of the egg when it's being formed. So it could have to do with stuff like the hormone levels of the parent that wouldn't necessarily be consistent child to child, because that cockatiel, not all of its siblings are like that. In fact, it's the only one out of all of its siblings, but obviously it didn't come from the same egg as its other siblings. And we know for a fact that that sort of behavior doesn't really have to do a lot with environment in birds so much as it has to do with like environment in fish. Like birds don't ever really like choose to have that happen. It kind of just is a thing that occurs to them based on something developmentally.
Because I do know fishes can change gender.
Yeah, they can. Fish can change their sex. They do it all the time in response to environmental conditions.
Do you think dinosaurs had the same issue as they were in eggs?
Yeah, I don't think it's so unreasonable to suggest that dinosaurs, were all egg-laying organisms, and I can imagine that for the dinosaurs that took time to develop in the egg, if there were, certain hormonal conditions met, you could get something similar to that where either a dinosaur would come out with, non-sex specific features, or it would look natally like one sex and then develop into another as it aged, because brains and bodies are incredibly complex, and the way that they interact developmentally is unpredictable and very interesting.
Okay. The question that I have is, do like dinosaurs do what other like mammals do in the sense of when it comes to babies, where like if another male lion wants a female and kills the female kids in order to have more kids, do dinosaurs do that?
We don't really have a lot of evidence of complex social structures in dinosaurs. Reptiles in general don't tend to form super complex social groups, and at least with modern birds, it doesn't really tend to be the case that parents and children spend more than one like season of their life together. Like they'll be together for a year, and then the children will disperse. It's called dispersive migration, where the kids will fly away after they're independent. Or sometimes, in dinosaurs, we have evidence that a lot of dinosaurs are what we call precocial babies. So they'll come out of the egg and they're already kind of independent. They can eat things that they can catch, and they don't really need any parental care. So for that, I definitely don't think so. But it is an interesting thing to bring up. I don't think we have analogous behavior for that outside of mammals. It mostly seems to be a mammal exclusive thing. And in extinct mammals, even, we don't really have evidence for or against it. So it's really up in the air. Behavioral data is difficult to find with dinosaurs. We're kind of limited to the few things that we can confirm in regards to like learning about what dinosaurs would have behaved like.
Oh, cool. Never knew that. That sounds interesting. Now, have you? This I know this is kind of off topic, but still with dinosaurs. Have you played Pokemon at least? Because I'm adding to the fossil Pokemon that they.
Yeah, I used to play Pokemon the card game, but I have not played a Pokemon game in quite a while.
I've played a few of the Pokemon.
Game in quite a while.
I've played a few of the Pokemon games.
All right, my roommate knows about Pokemon more than I do.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, because the reason why I asked is because how accurate are those fossils? Like, what are those Pokemon based on? Like,
Well, yeah, that's definitely something we can talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
I know there's a not dinosaur. There's a pterosaur named after
Aerodactyls.
Aerodactyl, right?
Yeah. There's a pterosaur that in real life that was named after the Pokemon because it supposedly looked a little bit like it. But here, where are the fossil Pokemon here? Where's the list?
They've got the fossils.
Okay. So
there we go.
Kabuto. What is Kabuto?
Kabuto is a like.
It's a trilobite.
Yeah.
It's a trilobite invertebrate, and it evolves into this thing, which kind of looks like it definitely looks like a trilobite. The one thing they did get really right with Kabutops.
It's more a horseshoe crab.
Oh, is it?
It's got it's got like the horseshoe crab tail.
Oh, you know what? You are kind of right. This looks a little bit also like a Ziphosurin. Okay. Any leftovers left behind by Kabutops are consumed by other Pokemon. Looks like, okay, it's a swimmer here. So that tells me maybe more that it's a trilobite. But Kabutops in particular seems to be a mix between trilobites and Ziphosurins, which are two kinds of ancient arthropods that existed, around like Cambrian and up until I think around the Devonian. Ziphosurins still exist today, but trilobites are extinct. So that's Kabuto.
Oh yeah, Ammonite is
an ammonite.
Is an ammonite.
Particularly, Ammonite is a benthic ammonite, which is interesting. It might not even be an ammonite, because there are some early relatives of ammonites that did not yet evolve, powered swimming. So, for example, stuff like the earliest cephalopods, they were like. The primitive nautiloids had shells that weren't yet light enough to swim up and down in the water column. And so they looked like ammonites, but they only existed on the seafloor. They weren't like pushing themselves around or controlling their buoyancy or anything because they have those big heavy shells. And Omanite seems to be that sort of thing. Just looking at how it sits in its art. Aerodactyl.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what regular one looks like, and the mega one.
So, mega evolutions aren't worth looking at here.
So Aerodactyl is kind of a mix between a lot of different kinds of pterosaurs. The top half of its jaw is very clearly inspired by pteranodonts. Jaw is very clearly inspired by pteranodontids, which have these like big toothless hooked beaks that they use to catch fish. Although pteranodonted beaks aren't like hooked down, they're more like swooped up. The lower jaw is more typical of what we would expect to see in like Tropeognathus, where there's a bunch of teeth in it. So that's interesting. It has actually, the one thing that's interesting about Aerodactyl is that it's missing a pteroid bone. Instead of having the three fingers of its hand pointing away and then having a pteroid bone coming from its wrist up to its shoulder that supports the front membrane of its wing, it doesn't have anything there. So it doesn't have a pteroid bone. I don't know what a scientist would classify Aerodactyl as. It does have that like kind of caudal shape on its tail, the like paddle. Lileep is a crinoid. That's what they are. Lileep is a crinoid, which are a group of marine invertebrates. They've existed a long time, since like the Ordovician.
I forgot that was a fossil.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a
For
living
ours, yeah, one of the
fossil.
fossil Pokemon.
Shieldon. What is
I'm
Shieldon?
not sure.
Oh, it's a Ceratopsian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shieldon is a Ceratopsian.
I was thinking of a different Pokemon.
Yeah. Shieldon might be the last one I go over, but I do enjoy doing this.
This is maybe a worthwhile video to do.
Shieldon particularly is looks like an early Ceratopsian because it doesn't have a nose horn or post-orbital horns. And then Bastiodon, at least is Mega Bastiodon a thing? No.
Nope.
But Bastiodon has these two like sideways facing orbital horns. And then it has two horns on the top of its head. I think I went over what Ceratopsian, like where I put Bastiodon within Ceratopsinae. And I think I had it with the Chasmosaurians. Yeah, I had it with Chasmosaurians. So there's that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, this might be a worthwhile video.
Yeah, I might make a full video going over all the fossil Pokemon and where I would put them. That was a good idea.
Yeah, because there's in the oldest game Sword and Shield, there's a thing you could connect two fossils together to make a new Pokemon, and that is a reference to early scavenging fossils where all the the term that they used to get hunt dinosaur bones.
Yeah. The paleontologists, yeah.
Yes, the paleontologists used to mix bones with other dinosaurs, thinking that it was thinking that it was part of that dinosaur.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
What we call that now is we call a specimen that comes from multiple animals mixed together chimera, like the Greek myth chimera, which was like the lion with 3 heads or whatever. Because sometimes when you find a bunch of fossils in one fossil bed, you make the mistake of assuming that they come from the same organism when they don't.
Yeah.
And that happened with the Raptor fairly recently. And it maybe happened with a fossil lizard that was called Xenodon or Xenodens, but yeah, so it's still a thing that happens. It's much less severe than in like the 1800s, but paleontologists still do make mistakes, and usually they get called out by their peers. So that stuff never makes it to publication, but sometimes people do submit stuff for publication without knowing that their fossils are chimeric.
Now, before I go, my last question is: do you know? Okay, I live in California. Is there like a place I could go to find like shark teeth or like tiny little bone fossils?
I asked this question at one point.
Like through a lake or a river?
Yeah, I asked this question at one point. I used to live in California a little bit when I was younger. But there's a website here that says Sharktooth Hill, California. You're mostly going to find marine fossils, but in the winter, there's a blog here called the Coastal Paleontologist talking about California shark teeth, where in the winter, because the tides are higher, you're going to get more exposure, and shark teeth will be more common on the beach. So I would say, I think Sharktooth Hill in California. I don't know how close that is to you. California is kind of a difficult state to find fossils in, unfortunately, because it's West Coast. But Sharktooth Hill will probably be your best bet from what I can see here.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for the chat. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Game Boy 98. Have a great night.
You too.
I think that was everybody. I think Game Boy 98 was the last one that was in there when I said I was. Oh, we had Josh. Let's let Josh up, and then Josh is going to be the last guest of the night. All right, you have to keep the app open when you talk, because if you like swipe away from the app, I can't hear you. So could you ask your question again?
My apologies. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Yes. Okay. I'm back. Do you study a specific clade, or are you just a dinosaur guy in general?
Yeah, the specific group of dinosaurs I study are actually a group of fossil birds, but I say dinosaur because birds are dinosaurs, and more people are going to be interested when I say I study dinosaurs than I study Galloenceres and their evolution after the Cretaceous Paleogene mass extinction. But yeah, so most of my research, if not all of it, focuses on ancestral character trait reconstruction of Galloenceres using both fossil and living specimens.
Excellent. Okay, neat. And I was also just curious as well, when dealing with extinct
I don't know, just extinct animals in general, do you generally push for like a non-ranked taxonomy in this case, or is there like a push for ranked
Oh
taxonomy in dinosaurs
yeah,
and
I'm a
extinct animals in general?
I'm a huge cladistics proponent, even with like living animals. I think ranked taxonomy gets so difficult because evolution doesn't follow rules. Evolution doesn't have ranks in mind because there's no mind behind it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think cladistics is for sure the way to go, where you just have nodes of common ancestry that you can lay out on a tree. Because oh my gosh, dinosaur taxonomy. Oh my gosh, dinosaur taxonomy in particular gets revised so often that
Mhm.
it's just difficult to keep any sort of ranking, because you can have things like families becoming genera, and
Mhm.
the genus gets pulled back because you find so many species that now you have to designate like subgenera, which are then basically just genera, and it's a huge mess. So cladistics is definitely the way to go with dinosaurs.
Gotcha. I was just curious because I deal with extant. I deal with beetles specifically, so like, all
Ooh,
extant stuff. So it's
very
mostly pushing
cool.
for ranked taxonomy. So
Yeah.
thought that was interesting.
I think we certainly have different perspectives on the issue, and I don't think it's a bad idea to do ranked taxonomy. I think it's different tools are useful for different people, but for me specifically, yeah, unranked taxonomy is primarily what I use.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I'm just kind of stuck in the realm of ranked taxonomy, and it kind of
Yeah,
sucks. So
fair. That's fair.
I was also just curious as well.
Oh, you closed out of the app again.
Or maybe just disconnected for a sec.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
sorry, I'm back. I meant to immediately look up that bird you mentioned. Was it Galloenceres?
Galloenceres is the clade of that includes all the birds that I work with. Um,
Excellent.
yeah.
Okay, is there any chance you could type that in the chat? Because I went to go try to look it
If
up in
you
Google.
if you I think if you type in fowl on Wikipedia, it redirects you to Galloenceres.
Excellent. Okay, I'll look into that. That seems interesting. So
Yeah. It's the group of birds that includes modern like ducks and geese, modern chickens, and also the gastromythids, which are like these big two-legged ground birds from South America that showed up right after the dinosaurs went extinct, and then the mirahungs, which are another group of like terrestrial running bird. And it also includes Pelagornithidae, which are the false tooth birds. They're a group of seabirds that have beaks that are kind of like the beak is covered in keratin, but the bone under the beak grows out like a tooth, and the beak grows around it. So they kind of have false teeth in their mouth.
neat.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you answering my questions. Sorry if I were constantly leaving the live. I'm
Hey,
not
no,
too
you're
used to
fine. You're
this.
fine. It's difficult to do this technically. I know how it is.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yeah, of course. You have a good night too.